Hey y'all, David Madaffari here, the humble, enthusiastic mouthpiece from St. George. I'm here to set the record straight again because I feel like this is what we're going to be doing for the next, probably for the rest of our existence as a city. If you were listening to NPR about 10 days ago, you may have heard my voice on a little quick, little piece on St. George. And it was also the transcript was on the NPR website, and I'll just read you the title of it, and you'll know everything about what it was about. It said, Louisiana court says mostly white enclave in Baton Rouge may secede and form its own city. Now, the reason you heard my voice is because I actually did a 45-minute interview with Aubrey Juhas, who was the author of this article and for the radio piece. She took, I think, 4 snippets from that 45 minutes interview. None of it had anything of substance that we talked about. And so what I've decided to do is to post the whole video, the whole audio and video. I recorded it on my end. I don't know if I had a thought that I needed to do this, but it just she wanted me to record the audio, so I said, well, I'll take the video too. So of the 45 minutes, she used 4 little snippets that had no context whatsoever. They weren't damning by any means. It was just that nothing of the meat and bones of the conversation that we had that was very cordial. It was very thoughtful, to the point that I had her actually agreeing with me on a couple of the points. And when she gave me my, a chance to have a final word about the situation, as you'll listen to, I made a particular point that I think that with journalism on this issue needs to stop, and apparently she didn't find that it was good enough, and she went ahead with it anyway. So I'm going to play this interview for you, actually, before I play this interview, what launched me to kind of do this now is that I actually have now received my first official anonymous hate mail. This came from California because that's what it says on the envelope. There is no return address, and there's no return address on the back either. It's not signed, but I want to read it to you real quick because there's something here that's so ironic about the whole thing. This person took the quote from the article where I stated, if people having the right to self-determination is considered racist or classist, then there's nothing I'm going to be able to do to convince them otherwise, because those are arguments that are based on emotion. They're not built on principle or truth of the situation, and the truth still matters. This person goes on with large text in bold and states, this is a silly defense, David, and then underlined, white people with means seceding from cities with large populations of color is the definition of both racism and classism. You want to get away from the people who are poor and African American, and you don't want to pay for them. Of course, if we applied even the classist element of this principle to Louisiana, perpetually a welfare state funded by those of us elsewhere in the United States, we would remove 33.4% of your state budget from your access. Applying the Madaffari principle, I kind of like that, the Madaffari principle. Why should I have to pay for you? For a state that refuses to tax its own citizens enough, including you, to pay for its even mediocre state government. You can perhaps convince yourself with self-righteousness, but as far as truth goes, you give us a bad joke and hot air. There are 2 things here that I need to unpack real quick before we get to the article. First is someone calling Louisiana a perpetually welfare state, sending from California, who has $1 billion. I don't even know what the numbers is. They have a much worse hole than Louisiana does per capita, per just what they spend there is not even, what they take in is not even close to what they spend there. So for that, I will say, how do you not see, why are you looking at the speck in my eye and not the log in yours? I think the federal system has done this to many states, which is where I will take this. The irony of this is that, in a sense, we both agree with the idea that we should not, like, states should not be subsidizing other states. Cities should not be subsidizing other cities. So this Madaffari principle, we would agree. If we should not, states should not be sending all our money to the federal government and just to beg for it back for projects back in our own state. I think the way that the founders of the country intended it to be is that the states hold the power and fund the federal government only to take care of those things of which it was empowered to do: national defense, negotiate treaties, interstate commerce. Everything else should be left to the states, which means a lot of the money should still be in every state to manage their people. Live within your means. And if we all did that as states, there would be no debt. Or be very little. It wouldn't be $34 trillion, whatever it's gotten to now. So to this anonymous person, I really wish you had actually, signed it, and maybe we could have this discussion, because I think there's something there that we could probably agree on in principle that has nothing to do with the incendiary racism and classism that gets thrown around, not just at the St. George movement, but for everything. When you find out that it's so not close to the truth, and I will put my integrity and my client base on the line for that. So with my first hate mail, or what maybe I should call it a put it in my place email, or actual real mail, which is actually more impressive. Here is the interview with Aubrey Juhas that I did, with some small edits that I had to make just to make it more listenable, because there are a lot of ums and ahs and some dead air where we may have been thinking. And I just wanted to make it a little more listenable. But everything we talked about that you're going to listen to here was discussed on the full interview. I just kind of truncated all the dead space from about 40 minutes to about 30.
Kind of walk me through some of those pivots just to ground us in the education part of this conversation. So you said public school in Ascension, and then come back to Baton Rouge and we're doing private, and now you homeschool.
Yes.
I understand, Ascension, very good public schools, sought after, coming back to EBR. Can you tell me about just your understanding of the public schools in EBR and the decision to not send to the public schools in the parish?
I guess by being around, you know that EBR, especially with the case, I can't remember the name of the case. And before I got on this, I was like, what is the name of that case? It was a desegregation case where they were busing the kids all over the place in Baton Rouge. And when my parents moved...
About like the desegregation order that came off of Brown versus the Board of...
Yes, yeah. And in Baton Rouge, and I think somewhere in the 2000s, it was like they finally closed the case. And 60 years, they finally said, okay, we're done. And the results of it did not improve any scores over 50 years. They doing all this, but nothing improved. So what was the point when they finally did that? We know what the point was socially, but if the rising tide lifts all boats, there was no education that was lifted that helped everybody. And the creation of the Livingston Parish school system being one of the best in the state, the Ascension School District being one of the best in the state. You look at the map and you see Baton Rouge, and you see Zachary has a great school system, which is in the parish, has its own school district. Livingston and Ascension. Why do they all have great school systems? And Iberville Parish now is starting to have people are starting to move out there for the school systems and just for safety. Baton Rouge is it's not getting better crime-wise if we just look at the statistics on that front for the last 8 years. Fast forward to homeschooling was when everyone came home from COVID. We were up and, we paid attention to what our kids were doing anyway. I'm going to make sure they're getting what they're supposed to get. But when they come home and we're seeing the Zoom and we're seeing what's going on and we have all their textbooks and everything that's there, we looked at each other and said, this is glorified public school from just a content standpoint. There was a lot of things that were just not being taught well or taught at all, things being left out. So we decided to homeschool. and it's been better for our kids, and they've enjoyed it. We've enjoyed it. It's been a lot more flexibility, especially for me when I work. That's kind of the overarching view of our schooling. It's like we moved to Ascension for 8 years to go to those public schools, and right when we started having kids, we never used them.
You guys are really, you've tried it all. You've like,
yeah.
all of the different options. And I want to go back to, when you're talking about just kind of looking at the map and here's a strong school district, here's a strong school district, like all of these, quote unquote good school districts around EBR schools. In your mind, like, what does that say to you? Like, why do you think, these school districts are doing really well, and what does that say about EBR schools, like why they might not be doing well?
There's two reasons. One is the obvious is like, well, the people who run the school boards aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it's very, I'll start there first. It's very top heavy from a budget standpoint. The superintendents and the people on the school boards. But I think over time, people just said, they'll just leave it to other people because I'm too busy to do it, because I'm working on this business or that. And you do that for 50 years, and then you get people who just become career education politicians, but nothing changes, and all they ever talk to us about is we need more money. I'm like, okay, does the superintendent really need to earn $250,000 a year? Where are the results? There has never been, nobody has ever had a result that says, okay, that's been worth it. That's been significant. You'll get some schools that'll jump up here and there, but as a whole, the district is still failing, which leads to my second belief is that parent involvement in the EBR school district is lacking sorely, because I believe in a lot of areas of this parish, it's just the daycare. They don't care what's going on over there. They don't care about the kids' education or holding teachers or principals or even the Board of Education accountable to the results. So what happens is parents, and being that I sell houses for a living, I've helped many of these people move out. I find that a lot of those parents that are moving out to those school districts, they are highly involved in what's going on in their schools. And they are heard. They go to the school PTA meetings, like the actual school meetings, and make themselves heard at their school boards. And that's just a microcosm of how, I guess, governance should work at school level. You go from HOAs to schools to local governments to parish to state to federal government. Accountability is the thing. The people have to hold them accountable. And in those districts that do well, the ones where the parents of those kids, they're holding them accountable. Hold on a second. There we go. So how do you fix it? It's kind of like I think it's up to the school boards now to make the pitch to bring them back, to say we're going to hold people more accountable disciplinarily or using funds wisely. All right, I wanted to jump in here real quick. The next section, the audio really on her side wasn't that great for some reason, and we started talking back and forth, a lot of ums and kind of thinking and talking at the same time. This particular section was about my thoughts on a particular school that was built in East Baton Rouge Parish called Park Elementary. I had said something to the effect that, the wasted money as an example was the building of that school and how underutilized it is. So I was able to capture more of my discussion of looking up that article, and we talk about it from this point forward. Okay, yeah, there it is. Here's an article from the 2019 Advocate. Words cannot describe new futuristic Park Elementary in Baton Rouge. It's a beautiful school. $21.7 million school at the time. That was 2019.
Yeah.
But it has never had the enrollment that they need. And there was a charter school that in the same area that just shuttered. They built it after, I think, in 3 years. IDEA just got shut down because they just didn't have the enrollment. And so that to me comes back to a parent accountability thing. If the families and parents in those areas where those schools are don't care, I don't know if there's anything you can do to make them care, which is sad because some of those kids are probably brilliant, and it's just unfortunate.
So I'm glad you say that, because I want to I want to ask you a larger question about that kind of idea, which is this, the idea of public education. And when we draw these large school districts, it brings people into this district together, people of different socioeconomic backgrounds, parents with different educational attainment levels. And obviously, every parent is looking out for their kids and their family first. Like, that is a given.
Yeah.
But, I think there's folks who then get into this tension of, like, even if the district is not the best district, if you have the means to stay, you should stay to help kids who are lesser than your own, to contribute to that system overall. Obviously, there's a breaking point for that too for families. So I wonder what you think of kind of those loftier ideas of public education that we talk about, but obviously when the rubber hits the road, it's hard.
Well, in the case of this, just like I mentioned with the busing and everything, they had 50. It's not like it was 5-year experiment, then they gave up. It was 50 something years. And you do that for people for so long. It's like, I want to just community school. That's you build a community by the people living around that area. Sending people across town from if you're trying to get to an equality standpoint of races and ethnicities and stuff, yeah, that's how you do it, but it's not effective. Is it effective? And I think it was proven that it wasn't. There's a breaking point of how large, in my opinion, a school district should get before it becomes unmanageable, because you have too many, you do have these great divides, and you're never going to please anybody. And when you try to please everybody, and this is in business too, you can't make everybody happy. So what you do is you have to find a way to really serve the people where they are, rather than trying to fit everyone into this box. The East Baton Rouge Parish school system has had their chance. Hundreds of people have had their chance, and I don't know if they couldn't get out of their own way, or were unwilling to make the hard decisions and say the hard things. That's what I think East Baton Rouge needs. With the city of St. George, you have 80 to 100,000 people in this one area. It's large enough to have its own school district. Central has 15,000. When it formed, it had 12,000 people. They got their own school district. Zachary's had their own school district forever. But when we try to do it, it's a big old problem. We're told it has to be a city, which is incorrect. It's not even legislatively accurate. It was kind of a power play, and I don't think that they thought it would ever get this far. And it's not like that they wanted to make the city. They just wanted a school district. Let us, we can manage these people. And what does that do? If you create another school district inside East Baton Rouge Parish, rather than letting people leave, that money stays in the parish. Those people will stay in the parish. They spend their money in the parish. So, and then it allows other people to come, maybe people in those areas that are having poor school districts, they can't move to Ascension. They can't move to Livingston, but they can still stay in the parish where their family is. And that's kind of the rising water lifts all boats mentality.
That's a really good point on the, keeping, not having this outflow from the parish. And even though there are obviously concerns that the school district itself has with, losing the kind of money that it gets directly, like you said, it would help in other ways to keep money in the parish.
It's one of the points that it always gets lost in this argument, and because no one's really thinking about where, no one's split from anything. Every viral reel and everything is Baton Rouge split, secession. No, we're still here. The parish population is still 445,000. The city is still 221,000 before and after. It's just the unincorporated area created their own city. We're still here. We still want to live here. That's like, we want to live here. But this is what it takes to make sure we can create something, manage it better, and maybe be a example going forward. Maybe we can use some more best practices. It's an opportunity to wipe the slate clean and try something new, because it hadn't worked for 50 years. We can't keep doing it. And the thing with the case, taking 4.5 years, we could have had that school district up and running for 2 years now, and they delayed that. And now there's going to be a whole other fight with all those tax dollars that were not collected. So I'm looking forward to see how that's going to work out. But we could have had a better school system starting already. And even this area, another thing that people don't really know about this area, there's only one for serving now would be 86,000 people. At the census of 2019, it was 86. It's probably close to 90 to 100,000 because more people have moved in, more development. There is one high school, one public high school in this area of town. So you can see where people might get upset. It's like, we can make our own school district here that's more community based, and the parents can have more accountability, more visibility with that school. All right, I'm going to jump in here again. The next question she asked was very specific, and it went on probably a lot longer than it needed to, so I'm going to kind of just summarize it right here. Her question was about the folks that she had talked to that were concerned about magnet schools and charter schools, and what those, what their kids are going to end up, where they're going to go in this new school district. And I said that really nothing's happening at the moment. That's going to that's a different process. Someone that I talked to that's familiar with it said that the charter schools really just have to apply for a different status on their charter that allows them to accept students from other areas. I think high level, the way I understood it was it's more about the school deciding whether they want to accept kids from other school districts, not whether they'll actually have the ability to. So it's more of a choice that they make than being hamstrung by what their geographic location within that school district. I worked with the transition district for a while, just volunteering, looking at ordinances and things like that. And they said that there were a lot of other states and cities in other states that were looking to this case to see how it was going to turn out, because they wanted to know some best practices going forward and how to handle certain things that came up. And I think there was an area in Shreveport that's looking to do the same thing. And they were waiting to see how this worked out. I don't know if they had the petition or if they're planning on it, a small section of Shreveport. You can fact check me on that. I heard that there were other areas in this state that were waiting to see how this turned out before they just decided if they were going to do something similar for a school district.
Yeah, well, that would make sense. Kind of trying to figure out what does the process look like, the road ahead, and obviously you all have put in a lot of time and effort to make this happen. Other places would want to kind of see how it turns out before they maybe go through all of the effort as well.
Well, yeah, and Central did it in 2010. 2010, yeah. But that was a very small community, and it didn't get it wasn't nearly the big deal that it was. And, if I may, dive into the racial aspect of it, that area is, if they want to talk about equity and things like that, that area is much less diverse than what St. George is. But it wasn't a big deal because it was a very small area, which means that this area they made a big deal about this because it was a tax dollar thing. But again, just like I made the point before, the tax dollars aren't leaving. They're just going to be appropriated more equitably to the area where it was, because we paid more to the parish than we were ever getting back in services. One high school, So after 50 years, you kind of get upset about it.
Yeah, I want to give you the opportunity to respond directly to kind of some of the more extreme framing.
Oh yeah.
That made with this whole thing that because I hear you, I get it from a parent perspective. You're trying to have the best quality public schools accessible to your kid, and then imagine it's hard to then hear the other side kind of frame it as, this is about race and class, and you all don't care about other people. You just want to split off and kind of create a little fiefdom and hoard your resources. How does that description make you feel? And how do you feel is there any truth in that? What is maybe the more nuanced and fair description of that? Because at the end of the day, it is about, right, like you just said, keeping your local tax dollars for local community schools, benefiting those kids. But I'm sure you all don't see it as, it's a middle finger to everybody else, or you're trying to hurt other people.
No.
It's just this, it's a difficult tension, obviously.
I look at the city of St. George, this movement, from a broader framework of just American principles. If people having the right to self-determination is considered racist or, classist, then there's nothing I'm going to do to be able to convince it. That is something, because those are arguments built on emotion. They're not built on principle or truth. And the truth still matters. That anybody can do this. If an area that is having a lot of issues, like it, and that's saying it doesn't cost money to do a petition. So let's say the areas that are, underserved, we'll use that term, are fed up with the school system too. This process is there for them to do it as well. And it probably wouldn't take nearly as long because it wouldn't be as large of an area. So
right. I think the argument they might then say is they don't have the money to leave. Like if they were to break off, they might not. Like I think Baker, people point to Baker. That's a majority black school system that broke off, and they're really struggling because they just don't have money in their community. So there is that, like you all have the resources where it does make sense to split off because you have enough money to support yourselves.
The question I would ask is it goes back to the tax dollars and how they're spent. So just like a household, like my family, we know how much money we're taking in. There's only so much we can spend on X, Y, and Z, so we have to set priorities. And running a small government should be no different than running a budget for a family. If you only know, let's use Baker. If I'm Baker, I know I only have this pool of money from my parish and my sales taxes to spend on X, Y, and Z. What are the most important things that we can spend that money on? If you're asking me, it's going to be safety, crime prevention, and schools. Because those are the two major things that drive people to certain communities. They leave cities because of bad crime and bad schools. They go to areas like Ascension, Livingston, Zachary for good schools and safety. And that is a universal opinion of everybody of race, class. Those are the two things. And so I always come back to those. I said, if you have the opportunity to do it and the will to do it, would you? And then that becomes a different question to me, or for that person. Are you willing? And it's something that can be done for everybody. And it's the principle of self-determination is not left to only people of means. The law is there for anyone to do it. And in this case, Central did it. St. George has done it, and other cities around the country are doing it because they don't like that their tax dollars are being spent in a way that's beneficial to everyone. In that sense, it's unequal in how the money's being spent. And Baton Rouge is one of the most over-leveraged cities in the country. Like, you probably know Drew Morrell, or he's the spokesperson for St. George. He has a podcast, the Drew Morrell Show. I don't know if you've listened to it. He started about 6 weeks ago. He goes into the leveraging of Baton Rouge and the numbers, and it's shocking. So that can scare people. I'm living in a city that's over leveraged. What happens if it goes bankrupt? It becomes Detroit. I think people have to start waking up to the fact that what is available to you and what your money should be doing. Can we make our own school district? Can we do this better? Yes. I always got people back to principle rather than the details of it's St. George, it's tax dollars. If you have an opportunity to change it, let's change it. And this is the route that was open to us.
Those are all of my questions. In the 3.5 minutes before free Zoom kicks me off, is there anything else you feel you need to say that I didn't give you room to say?
It's funny that you messaged me because I just read this like 3 days ago, and I went and I found it. It was about Brown versus Board of Education, May 17th. I don't like the way the words being used in these articles because to me words matter because the truth matters. Secession, and it's like it because there was a documentary called Separate and Unequal that was released in 2014 about the movement. That was about the movement. That's when it was just a school district movement. And in this article, secession is an incendiary word. It's a trigger word. Right. And if we are going to get past any of this in our country, we have to stop using trigger words to elicit emotion than just the facts of what's here, because it's actually factually incorrect. It is an incorporation of an unincorporated area. Nobody's leaving. And to create a school district, if you're saying you're seceding from a school district, I think that's that's an overstatement of what it is. you're still going to be in Baton Rouge. It's still going to be managed by the Board of Education Secondary, Bessie. So what's the difference of whether Central and Zachary have one and Baker, but St. George wants to have one, and now it's secession? A lot of the press about this has never used just facts. They use these words because they're subconsciously to trigger emotions about the facts, not just what they are. And that's why I like taking this interview with you so I can give you my perspective on that, because that kind of writing only serves to make it worse than better.
Yeah. And I agree. I want to produce things that everybody wants to read and not just kind of wave away and dismiss as being one-sided. And I appreciate you bringing that up. And I would say, with
I've got to listen a minute.
Breaking off from the school district is how I would say it. You're breaking. So.
And that's really the end of the interview. We exchanged a couple pleasantries before Zoom kicked us off of the 45-minute time limit that they have. But I wanted to really focus on that last thing she just said, where she said she wanted to write something that is appropriate, more or less, and that someone wouldn't wave away as being one-sided. This is right after I made my case that we need to stop using incendiary words and trigger words to elicit emotion that drives stories rather than just the facts. And then the headline of the article that she writes, and for the NPR radio piece, Louisiana court says mostly white enclave in Baton Rouge may secede and form its own city. This is where I will now make my opinion on all of this. This is activism journalism. This is not journalism for the sake of educating. This is journalism for the sake of stoking division, not for learning. Because if she was really interested in getting an unbiased article or piece that no one would just wave away, as using her words, wave away as being one-sided, well, this headline completely has one half of the people that support it waving it off because it is a one-sided article. Of this entire interview that you listened to, the only thing she used that I said was that I called myself the humble, enthusiastic mouthpiece of St. George, that I said that we can make our own school district that's more community-based, and that parents can have more accountability and more visibility with that school. She used the one line where I said, and this is out of context again, where I said, nothing changes, and all they ever talk to us about is that they need more money. The final line that she used was what I consider kind of the crux of the entire St. George movement and the people who feel strongly about it. And that is, if people having the right to self-determination is considered racist or classist, then there's nothing I'm going to do to be able to convince you, because those are arguments that are built on emotion and they're not built on principle or the truth, I would say, of the situation. And the truth still matters. And so you listen to an actual, much more thoughtful dialogue about the history of East Baton Rouge, the tax dollar situation, the records of the schools, what is important to people. If she had just played this whole interview, that may have been, at least in some sense, to some people go, okay, I may not agree 100% with what I'm reading about this story, but I have a little more information to say if I was in their shoes, I might be able to see where they're coming from. As opposed to just turning this entire interview into white enclave secession. It's incendiary, it's irresponsible, and we have to continue to fight back in any way that we can, cordially, and just with the facts, just the way I'm doing it right now. I was glad to take the interview. I told her I would do it again. I don't know if she wanted to talk to me again, because I know that I had a much different opinion than the others that she had interviewed for this article. Thank you for watching, and I hope you guys learned something today. I know this is another long form video, but sometimes that's how these things go. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you guys next time.